Hello, good morning, and welcome to your last lecture for the Academy, Lark Certified Coach Training Program. What an exciting time for all of you and for us as faculty and staff at Lark. We're so excited for you and just hoping for you just all blessings in life as you guys finish up. So I want to take some time to talk about completion and the process of completion, give you guys some examples of what that can look like, and also just encourage you, as always, to make this flow from who you are, what your strengths are as a coach, and what a fulfilling end to a professional coaching relationship would look like for you and your client. So we're in workshop 8, and we'll be talking about completion. So as we do this, we want to talk a little bit about our alliance moving forward as a group, some definitions. We'll talk about some difficult coaching situations and how to manage those, the process of completion, and then just what's coming up next for you guys. So as far as our alliance goes, moving on from here, we'll start treating you more like just individual coaches completing the program rather than an entire group or system or cohort. So at this point, you guys will probably continue to view each other as a group, and you're all one cohort that has shared experiences together. But from here on out, as faculty and just us here at Lark Song, will have just individual relationships with you as coaches, and hopefully see you in various different group settings from here on out. So I just wanted to give voice to that so you guys knew what to expect moving forward. So just know that if you have any questions or need to communicate with us, you can do that as an individual, and we'll respond. So moving forward, we're going to talk a little bit about definitions. There are just a couple that we need to consider. One is completion, and the other is referral. So in a professional coaching relationship, completion is the process of terminating the coaching relationship, of it ending. And so I've found that in my experience in some different helping professions and just relationships as a whole, we tend to be okay at beginning. We're all right at maintaining, but when it comes to completing or ending or terminating something, I think people are really fuzzy around the edges, don't do that very well in general. And so we want to teach you how to complete a relationship well in a way that honors the season that relationship served, and also empowers both individuals to go on in the future and deepen their learning, forward their action, live in a fulfilling and balanced way. So I just think that if we could treat all of our relationships like this and complete them with honor and gratitude for the purpose that it served, there would be a lot less hurt and a lot more life around us. So we're going to try to do that well in our coaching relationships, in our professional coaching relationships. And the second definition, referral, is just the action of sending someone to another person or place for appropriate and necessary professional care or advice. All the way back in Foundations of Coaching, we talked to you about the role of being a coach and its scope. So we want to kind of revisit that here at the end, and talk a little bit about when your client's needs fall outside the scope of you and your professional coaching relationship. What do you do, and what does referral look like? Okay? All right, so here are some difficult coaching situations that you might encounter, that you probably will encounter at different points as you continue on your journey as a professional coach. In these situations, you either have to drastically redesign your alliance, complete with the client, or possibly refer them to another helping professional. So here are some things that come up: missed appointments, late payments, your client's asking you for a job or character reference, when you start coaching gremlins instead of coaching your client on a regular basis, when your client is losing momentum, when they or you are feeling a lack of challenge, when you start having negative feelings around the coaching relationship, or you're irritated with them on a prolonged basis, or when there's hidden information, things that they're intentionally hiding from you that make it difficult to read or understand where they're at. When the coach becomes uncomfortable for a variety of different reasons in the relationship, and understanding that sometimes there's a need to breach confidentiality. These are all difficult coaching situations because we generally don't like to deal with them. They're a little bit uncomfortable and they cause problems in the coaching relationship. And so as a coach, keep your eyes out for them and notice what you can do, number one, to design your alliance in the first place so that the chance of encountering these goes down. And secondly, just when they do come up, being brave enough, having enough courage and professionalism to kind of just confront them head on and deal with them in a professional and ethical way that protects both you, your client, and the profession of coaching. So when your client is missing appointments on a regular basis, or every single one, they seem to be rescheduling, you would start off by first addressing that with them, asking what they might need more of or less of from you as a coach so that they can make their appointments, and also just designing your alliance. It might be that they're missing appointments because they're not motivated to be there anymore. And so what is it about your coaching relationship that might need to change? Or do you just need to complete the coaching relationship because now isn't a good time? If they haven't met the minimum requirement for your coaching, which should be a minimum requirement of at least 3 months, if they haven't met that, then I would really encourage you to try to figure out an agreement, redesign your alliance in such a way that you could complete that minimum requirement of 3 months. Sometimes you can't, and you just have to end the coaching relationship, but sometimes you can, if you can get curious enough and creative enough to make it work for them. So it might be that they think that you can only meet at certain times, so they're trying to fit that into their schedule when really it just won't work. Or maybe they're trying to do a coaching appointment right up against something else, and that won't work for them. So view it first as a learning opportunity. What can they learn from having missed these appointments that are obviously important to both of you? And if then that doesn't work, if renegotiating doesn't work, then it's time to complete with that client. The second thing is late payments. So if you run into a situation where your client is perpetually paying you late, you need to respect them and their finances enough to address that. It might be that you need to renegotiate your alliance so you guys are meeting for a shorter amount of time or less frequently so that they can honor their budget and make their payments on time. It also might be that they just forgot, or that things are getting difficult for them and they might need to adjust something personally. So you might need to give them a little bit of time to do that and then resume your coaching when they're all caught up. a general rule of thumb for me is that I don't like my clients to get more than 2 payments behind, because it's incredibly difficult to catch up, and it just impedes your coaching relationship because they're thinking about it while they're on the phone with you, and it disrupts your level of deep trust with them. So if you could just protect your coaching relationship and talk about late payments when they come up, and figure out a way to honor the agreement that you set forth in the beginning. If you don't honor it, your client might not either. So you just want to make sure to hold that highly and treat it very professionally. If it gets to the point where you have more than a couple payments that have been missed, you're going to want to complete your coaching relationship with them or put it on hold until they're caught up. When a client asks you for a job or a character reference, that's actually an ethical situation. A lot of times they don't see that as being wrong in any way, because to them, you know them and see them or think of them more highly than many other people in their lives. So if they ask you for that, while you're in a professional coaching relationship with them, you just need to tell them that that wouldn't be appropriate for you at this point because of your professional coaching relationship. But then maybe could you focus on that as a topic of their next session, and who might be good people to ask them that. Sometimes as we go into coaching gremlins, sometimes your client continues to show up with their saboteur or their limiting beliefs or their gremlins, and you can't coach from there. You remember that you can only coach what's real. And so if they keep showing up with that, you might want to ask yourself if they are in need of counseling instead of coaching, and make a referral to a local counselor in your area. This is where it's really helpful to get out and start networking and finding other helping professionals that you respect, that you don't necessarily need to compete with, but you could collaborate with, and that you would trust to refer clients that you adore to them. So there are actually probably 3 or 4 counselors that I highly trust and refer clients to when it's obvious that they need a therapist or a counselor instead of a coach. So just pay attention to those gremlins and how often they pop up. Try to address them head on. And if they become too much, if your client continues to show up session after session with the same limiting beliefs or the same depressed affect, then you're going to want to refer them, complete with them, and refer them to another counselor. During that time, your counselor might ask for a release of information from you. They might ask for your coaching notes. You just need to make sure that if that happens, you have written permission from the client to share those notes with the counselor or therapist. It is also helpful for you to create your own release of information form for your coaching practice. You can find boilerplate release of information forms on Google online and adapt them, to have your logo or whatnot on them. But you guys even have one for this program for supervision, and you can adapt that if needed for referrals. Another thing is just loss of momentum. So maybe you and the client started out great. You designed your alliance really well. You're making awesome progress, and then things started to kind of fade or fizzle out. That usually happens when you as the coach get into your default mode and you're not expanding your range appropriately. You're not coming fully to the table, or you've kind of run out of using all your tools. Like you've done House of You and Life Purpose and Future Self and strengths assessments and third entity or whatever it is, and you feel like you've kind of checked off all those boxes. And so you lose momentum, but continue to challenge yourself as a coach to come fully prepared to each session, believing that you are creative and resourceful and relational and whole and purposeful, believing fully that that this coaching session in and of itself can be transformational. When you stop believing that, and when you stop stretching yourself, and when you stop showing up fully and resourcefully, your client probably will too. So take a loss of momentum as maybe just a red flag that you might not be showing up the way that you need to be as a coach, and have a discussion with your client about that. What are they what might they want more of or less of from you moving forward? Or is it just time to complete because they've met all their goals and they've rocked it out for 4 months and now they're just ready to go? So that's another one. Lack of challenge. So a lot of times I'll talk with coaches and they'll think that they've got this amazing relationship with their client because their client's doing all these incredible things, and but the client actually isn't feeling challenged by the coaching relationship because the coach is requesting things that would be challenging for them personally, rather than being creative about what would be challenging and pushing their client. So, for example, it might be incredibly challenging for you to commit to write a book. But if you're coaching a client that's already written 4 books, then that might not be the best thing to request them to do. So if you are kind of just getting into public speaking as a coach, but you're coaching someone who has done several conference presentations or led workshops, seminars, conferences, trainings, different places, then what's going to be challenging for them is completely different than what it is for you. So just be aware of those issues of transference and make sure that you are continuing to challenge your client in a way that's meaningful for them, not necessarily a way that might be meaningful for you. Okay, if you show up on a call and you're dreading the phone call with your client or that in-person coaching session, or you're like, oh man, gotta go do that again, more than once, then I would really explore whether or not it's time to complete with them. If you can't continue to champion a client, then you probably can't continue to coach them. So you need to finish up your minimum agreement if you haven't already, and then complete with that client in a way that honors them. It's one of the hardest things to do as a coach is when you sign on with a client that you actually don't enjoy or you don't use wisdom around your relationship with them. It's really difficult to complete well and in a way that honors them because it makes you a little bit uncomfortable and stretches you. So if the client is hiding information from you, say they are having an affair and one of their goals is to strengthen communication in their marriage, but they don't tell you that they've had the affair, or they have a goal around increasing performance at work and they actually get their hours cut, but they don't tell you about that. That becomes a real problem in a coaching relationship because, again, it just breaks away at your designed alliance and the trust that you build with them. So I would just really trust your intuition, and if you feel like there's something hidden, call that forth. If you find out information about your client from someone else, then honor them by going to them first and talking to them about it and figuring out how you might be able to continue your coaching relationship or design your alliance, understanding that new information. Or if it's something that just you feel like it pretty much destroys your trust in that client, then you need to complete with them and or refer them to another coach. If the coach becomes uncomfortable for any number of reasons, maybe the client is acting in a way that's unprofessional or trying to contact you in more social situations or something like that, then you might need to address that or complete with your client. And the last thing is just this is a difficult coaching situation. It might not always lead to completion, but sometimes it does lead to referral, is when you need to breach confidentiality. And we don't really talk about this in the beginning of the program because we want you to take confidentiality incredibly seriously. There are only a few situations in which breaching confidentiality is considered permissible, and that's if the client is a threat to themselves or others, if they are going to harm themselves or others. And if that's the case, then you can breach confidentiality, stay with them on the phone while you figure out a plan to help them, whether that's calling 911 if it's a very serious suicidal sort of emergency or homicidal emergency, or getting them in touch with a crisis hotline so that they can connect to someone immediately if that's needed. So just understand that there might be issues, especially with minors, where you might need to breach confidentiality, and those issues, those situations need to be discussed in the beginning when you're making your agreements around confidentiality. They need to understand that there are a couple times when a breach of confidentiality is appropriate, and that's just when they threaten to bring harm to themselves or someone else. So just understand that. Okay, so all of those are just examples of different difficult coaching situations that you probably will run into at some point or another, and you'll have to make a decision on whether or not to redesign your alliance and continue your coaching relationship, to complete and just be done, or to complete and refer. So when these things come up, something that's incredibly helpful is professional conferencing. Call other coaches that you know are certified and discuss with them the best, most professional, ethical way to move forward with a particular client. Write notes about that in their client file about how you conferenced a particular client and what the advice was or how you followed up, so that you have that written out. Okay, so the process of completion. This is actually really fun. If you get excited about discovery sessions, I would hope you'd get excited about completion sessions as well. They're kind of two bookends in the coaching relationship. So as much intentionality and creativity as you all put into your discovery session process and your discovery process enrolling new clients, put that much creativity and intentionality into your completion process as well. You might come up with completion questions that you email them ahead of time. You might come up with a completion experiential learning activity. Maybe during completion, that's when you go out and do something with horses, or that's when you do something with art. Maybe during completion is when you make some sort of, video or message honoring that client or something. You can decide what it might be. But the process of completion ideally is an opportunity to celebrate progress, bring awareness to learning, and create closure around a season of professional coaching. It should be clear between yourself and your client when and how your completion session will take place. So if you're having it in a different location than normal, or if it's going to take a little bit longer than a normal session, then you're going to need to make sure that you're both clear on that and that you stick to those times and places. Themes throughout the coaching session for completion are acknowledgement, honor, and forwarding action. Like I mentioned, it's the bookend to your discovery session. So when you complete with a client, be sure that their notes are in order in your files and that their hours are logged in your client log, so that as you continue to pursue further certification, and if those records were ever subpoenaed for any reason, that they would be accurate. In your log, you want to have the date for when you started with your client and the date for when you ended. The date when you ended would be your completion session. In the completion session, there are a couple things that you're going to want to do. First, send your client any final paperwork or information about a week or so before your completion session. So if there are any questions you want them to answer ahead of time, if there's any paperwork that you need for release of information, or just getting your file in order, or anything like that. If there's any final invoicing that you need to do, or anything, make sure that you do that about a week or so before your completion session, so that when they show up for it, you're not spending a lot of time on housekeeping or logistics. When you go into your completion session, have a plan. What do you want it to look like? How much time do you want to spend on each component? You want to have a time where you're reflecting. You also want to have a time where you're creating, looking forward. I usually, in a completion session, I look at just completing the old and then creating the new. What do we want to complete and what do we want to create moving forward from here? But then also something that I do is I'll usually get my clients some sort of small gift that's a structure from their coaching relationship. Before, I've done little bracelets with their metaphor from their purpose statement on them. I've done some sort of Yupo paper activity where we create art together, and then we'll trade paintings so that I keep theirs and they keep mine, just kind of as a blessing for them and for me, a way to remember them as my clients. So for you, it might be something completely different. You might write them a letter or a note, or just give them an awesome affirmation, but have some sort of plan for how you're going to create closure and honor around this session. So some questions that I use in the completion session are: what was most valuable about your coaching experience? What do you wish we would have had more of and less of? How would you describe your coaching experience to someone else? How is your life different than when we started? What obstacles did we face and overcome? What were the disappointments or letdowns that you experienced during our time together? What resources will be helpful to you as you move forward from here? How would you like our relationship to be moving forward? Since it won't be a coaching relationship, what will it be, if anything? And then what's next for you? Another thing that you might consider doing is creating some sort of post-coaching survey for yourself, so that you can measure your impact and can measure if you have specific professional coaching goals, how you're reaching those with clients. I mentioned a little bit about this, but create a structure that honors your coaching relationship and brings it to a close. So if that's creating something together, that's just fine. If it's bringing them a rock with their name on it, that's just fine. Whatever it might be, just create some sort of physical object that honors the coaching relationship, so that they can look at that and continue to be empowered and inspired as they move forward. And be sure to end on time. This completion is one of the hardest sessions to end on time. You could let it linger and go on and talk and tell stories, but remember that this is still a coaching session, and you still want to honor your agreement and end on time. Anything that's not said or stated within that time is okay. It's all going to be just as it should be, so you can move forward. If you miss something or forget something, or they miss something or forget something, then they're able to email you or communicate with you in whatever ways you set up are appropriate for your relationship moving forward. So just understand that and try to continue to honor their time and just our profession by being professional and ending on time. Okay, so for you guys, that's all I have to talk about around completion and the process of it in professional coaching, but you have a few things that are coming up next. You need to complete and upload your final homework assignments. Schedule your oral final exam. That'll take place sometime in the next couple of weeks as you are available and the faculty are available. Review the requirements and the process for the board certified coach exam. You'll find a link to those requirements and that process on course sites so that you can just review that and have a complete understanding of what you need to do moving forward to finish that. So it's been a blast and love you all, and I hope that moving forward we'll just be able to complete this in a way that honors you and shows you how grateful we are for you and your participation in this program, and just your courage and willingness to be some of the first Lark Song certified coaches. So congratulations, and hope you guys have a great rest of your day wherever you're at.